Welcome everybody to Today in Space, the all things space science podcast. Back by popular demand, we have Brian Stofiel of Stofiel Aerospace. Brian, thank you again for coming back on. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Doing well. We are in, you can't see this right now, but it'll be on the video. We're in studio beta because I just moved myself. So the show also moved, as well as the 3D printing company, AG3D. So lots of stress with moving, but we have a studio we can record, so I'm happy.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, we were packing up the lab right now out of my basement.
We were just talking about that. So what's going on? What prompted the move? What's going on?
Well, we've got our patent pending with the heat coating and the positive structural molding process. So we've begun actually taking licensing. We'll sign our first license Friday.
Wow. So to those that don't understand, because even I'm not 100% sure, licensing, how do you mean? How does that work for someone trying to get into this?
So the process and the ceramics are U.S. citizens only, because of the relationship with the rocket. But we are actually we're actually first going with the hobby 3D printing world. So we'll be signing our first license with 3D Print Club.
Wow.
They said they wanted to be the first. So Al there is going to sign a license, and so there's two ways that you can do that. There's a bunch of legal eyes, all that. That's probably not the exciting part. The exciting part is we have revenue coming off of space systems, and that's probably the biggest thing that most people forget about, is that there's commercial applications for the technology, and there's widespread commercial applications. So while we're a space company, we're going into the healthcare industry, into the mining industry, into the automotive industry, and applying our technology to other industries.
That's incredible. And just for anyone who's just joining, first time you listen to the episode, or you haven't heard the first interview we did with Brian Stofiel, Brian, along with his daughter Bella, started this company, Stofiel Aerospace, to go into space. There was an inherent need for this. Anyone who's doing anything with cube satellites, I had one here. I'll look for it for the show later. But basically, small payloads going into orbit. And correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but you guys are bring your payload that you want to launch into orbit Monday. By Friday, you're going to have it up in orbit, delivered, and you're going to make the rocket in that time, coat it with that special ceramic that you were talking about, and get the whole system to launch in a rapid fashion that has never been done before. It's on demand.
Of the rocket, on demand is what we call it. Yeah. The construction of the rocket takes a matter of hours. It's measured in hours, and roughly it's about an 87 hour process. To produce one of our suborbital rockets. So we can really, as soon as you bring us the payload, we can quick prototype it out, do the ceramic, and have that rocket up in the air. The goal is 1,000 missions commercially the first year.
You know, I was listening to your award, which congratulations, by the way, the St. Louis Lunar Gateway. That was very cool. You opened my eyes to a whole community in St. Louis that I had no idea about, and just to see that award and to kind of learn a little bit more about you was cool, and to learn more about the organization that there really are people focusing on this. I think a lot of fans that I've talked to the show, they've always loved space, but you know, they'll listen to the few shows that are on TV with Neil deGrasse Tyson or anything on that has like Michio Kaku, all these famous scientists. Those are the kind of things they're looking for. But the stuff today, I think it gets muddied up, and that's why I'm so glad we're able to talk and share this new frontier of space that's happening, and it's happening very, very quickly.
Yeah, and it is, but it's happening under the mass media's nose.
Yes.
And it's been a problem in the space sector because of the intimate connection with the military.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we saw as the problem was that most of the space industry, the SciComm, is aimed at adults, and that's the wrong aim. The space industry did that since the 80s. We actually reorganized and said, look, it's the 7 to 14-year-olds. I said, my generation didn't get the space bug. I said, but her generation, we can get that space bug real easily.
Right.
And they haven't made a decision about their life yet. And like we say, we want to take everyone. It doesn't matter what job you are. We're going to need you in space.
Yeah.
The way we talk about actually saving the Earth is moving industry and mining operations off the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're not actually polluting anything. You're not taking any resources from the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a long-term goals that we can set with Bella's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
We can set these long-term goals, but the media wants to concentrate on the 5 to 10 year.
Right.
Right. So you see companies like Planet Labs that go out of business because they just can't. They're looking out that 15 years, but they can't survive right now.
Right.
Because they don't have the audience.
Right. Yeah. The industry's not developed yet,
and that's why we extend our products out to other industries. We don't go to a lot of the space symposiums and conferences, and you can go to one every day for a week.
Oh my God, what just happened? Oh boy, folks, technical difficulties.
Hello.
Hey, Brian. Don't know what happened. We got cut off there. Yep. Brian, can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me.
You can hear me.
I can hear you. Can you hear me? No? Brian? What happened?
Hello, it's Brian.
Hey, Brian, you there?
Yep, I'm here now.
Okay, cool. I'm not sure what happened. We got cut off. Sorry about that.
That's all right. I don't even know where we got cut off.
Same here. We were talking about... you're talking about looking outside the industry, and that's kind of something I wanted to talk to you about more. Because you've been putting out some good content lately, and I've really been... thank you for that, by the way, for being an owner of a company and then looking at social media as a way to just share SciComm. Like your science communication, the way you're doing it, I love it. I share your passion for it. So thank you for that. But more on the importance of looking outside your industry. How important has that been, and how does that relate to that industry bias we related to and that fresh eyes look?
Well, one of the biggest things is that we come from outside the industry.
Right.
So we're not 40-year space veterans. I come out of the medical industry, and my COO comes out of the solar industry, and flight director comes out of military and ATC. So we all come from a variety of industries to this industry. And that really brings a perspective on the customer. So we didn't come in with a bias on who our customer was. So we're going to go to RSNA in Chicago with a ferrofluid nuclear magnetic resonance experiment as our payload. RSNA is a big medical imaging conference, MRI, CT, ultrasound, all the medical imaging. That was my old industry. And what we're doing in space is taking an MRI unit and MRIing ferrofluid, which is nanoparticle metals. So that's the type of thing that you don't see running around. One of the reasons we're doing it is it's for drug delivery. It's for an MRI contrasting agent. there's actual real world consumer now type applications, and you don't hear about those coming out of the old space companies, right?
Right. Well, and then there's the issue of, with the way the space companies have been before, they're government entities, they're government branches, so they inherently can't advertise that kind of thing, which is a thought that Jerry Goodson, engineer veteran who used to work on the space shuttle, was kind of introducing me to. It's like, yeah, they can't. Like, that's not really. They're just not allowed to.
So what happens is you get spin-offs, which they work.
Mm-hmm.
You get NASA spin-off companies, which is like one of the companies we were looking at with the ferrofluids, Ferrotech. They're a NASA spin-off, but they found their success in speakers, in audio speakers.
Oh.
So they've been doing that since the 60s, and now we're going to bring them back to the space industry.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so there's a big returning to the space industry roots, returning to the commercial, and I call it the commercial roots of space industry. Before NASA, the McDonnell Douglas guys that we work with, right? They were a private company that the government came to and said, make this, versus being a government-funded entity. So they had other products. They didn't just have space products.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to accomplish here. So this is the first of it. The next one will have some microfluid flow implications, and that's in high volume flow through microfluids and that type of stuff. So that when we actually produce, like this payload 3, the MRI experiment, when we produce an experiment, we apply it to another industry. So who else has the problems we have, right? And we find that a lot of them have the same problems, that they all solved different ways.
Yeah.
So they all may have the same problem with the fluid valve, but they've all solved it a different way. And we can take the best of the best and make it into something new.
That's. I love that. I've always said on the show, if you can think of a job, you can have it in space. Like there's literally, we're going to need so many different people when we start living in space, and it's almost fractal in the way that it relates. And one of the things I wonder, and I want your thoughts on this, do you think people in the space industry, or just the space industry in general, just got caught up in the idea that space is hard and not, and like there's almost like a class to it where, I don't know, it's almost like if it was marketing, we just sold it wrong.
Yeah. They saw it as a technological barrier to entry. That's an economic term, I believe. Okay? So space has a technological barrier to entry, and that's getting into orbit.
Right.
Right? That's the Mississippi River with St. Louis as low Earth orbit. Okay?
Yeah, if you were going to visualize the perspective of it, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, it's actually a fairly big river, and there's still only like 7 bridges across it. So there's a big leap here. What we've seen with on-demand manufacturing, the microization of processors, the computing power, the availability of information on the internet, what we've seen is that technological barrier to entry fallen.
Right.
Okay? And it fell in a huge way. And nobody's really noticed just yet because it hasn't filtered out of the R&D department yet.
Right.
But it's coming. And that's 119 small satellite launchers on the books, 39 under active development, and 5 that are active.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so the technological barrier to entry to launch fell probably somewhere right around the same time SpaceX started. Okay, but nobody's noticed it yet because it takes a 5 to 10 year ramp up time. Okay. Yeah, you can go out and build one.
Right.
But you don't know how to fire it.
Right.
You don't know how to guide it.
There's still development that needs to be done.
Yeah.
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 And so that might be something that. Sorry, go ahead.
But I'll say one-offs are normal. I mean, we've got one-offs that fire all the time.
Right.
Amateurs that reach amazing altitudes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you just have to take it that one more step.
Right. Yeah, and you mentioned something in that award speech, which we'll have the link to the video here, where you were talking about how reusability is not necessarily the direction that, in your mind, the space industry should go to, where that's more of like a symptom of that, or a consequence of being truly one-off and being truly on demand, that it doesn't need to be reusable. Yes, it will come with it, but I mean, and for those who are still just are not necessarily visualizing it, or you want a better picture, think about how SpaceX launches these large spacecraft into orbit, and they're doing it at a regular pace, faster than they've ever done before. But with what Brian's doing and what Stofiel Aerospace is doing, and this technology of taking a 3D printed rocket, lifting up in a balloon, and then lighting it for not very long, right? It doesn't need to be lit very long for it to even go into orbit.
Orbital looks like it's a 2.5 minute burn. It can be only up to 45 seconds. So
okay.
there's a way to do it at 45 seconds, but most of the burns that we're going to put into like research orbit, which will drop out in about 2 weeks to a month.
Mm-hmm.
They're about a 2-minute burn.
Wow.
From the moment we light the motor to the moment it burns out. Now, we do stage the motor. So there are stages inside the motor. We just don't drop anything. Like the first stage gets lit, and then it comes up to pressure before we actually, so we throttle back all the way
mm-hmm.
and let the engine come up to pressure before we actually launch.
Okay.
So there's some lag time there in flight time versus burn time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's unusual for a solid rocket, right?
Mm-hmm. Actually, could you explain that a little bit more, why it's unusual?
Once you light a solid rocket, they mm-hmm. usually just tend to burn.
Okay.
So what we've been able to do is throttle our rocket back and save some of the potential energy of a burn. So the burn time on our rocket sometimes is not, if I'm going to a different orbit, I'll actually throttle back, wait for some of my engines to burn out, and then relight them.
Oh.
Okay? So the solid rocket is fully orbital capable to control an orbital burn and do accurate orbital insertions.
So is the idea with liquid that... Oh, sorry. Is the idea with liquid that basically as soon as you light it, it's going till it's gone?
Solids, yeah. As soon as you light it with a solid,
solid
it goes. Liquids, they can turn it off, they can turn it on. They also can throttle it, right?
Gotcha.
We can do that also, which is not a normal capability of a solid rocket.
Right. So you have the ability of control of a liquid system, but with solids.
With solids.
That's crazy. Wow.
So now you can store your rocket in ready condition. So the rocket can sit there ready to go. All you do is put a balloon on it and it fires.
So there's none of that extra step process of pressurizing the liquid into
nope.
the rocket and letting it get to the right pressures and all that stuff. Wow.
Yeah. So you mount a payload, or you pre-position a payload, like let's say an earthquake in California.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You have a shipping container sitting there. It's been sitting there for 1.5 years. Big earthquake comes. You run over. You grab some helium or hydrogen. You fill the balloon, and within about 1.5 hours, you've got a satellite dedicated to the natural disaster. And the satellite only stays up a couple weeks or a couple months. So you've got every 80 minutes, you've got communication link and satellite downlink photos. And that would be like a prepackaged CubeSat package, right?
Right.
And this is the Red Cross, this is FEMA, this is the military, this is even cargo ships. Some of the cargo ships want to monitor certain ships crossing the Atlantic or the Pacific. So they may put one of these up and monitor that whole route across to make the orbit below research orbit, but to make it across that whole route as that ship crosses the Atlantic or Pacific.
Wow. So, we're talking about we're talking about entering a huge amount of people, customers that no one had ever even thought were possible to be customers of the space industry. And we're making it not only possible for them to enter at a reasonable price, but we're going to be doing it at the rates, like if you're going to compare to something, I don't know, like what Amazon's doing with drone delivery, where it's just like, you're going to be able to deliver a package or deliver anything into orbit quickly. Space and orbit.
Let's not even go to orbit. Let's not go to orbit. Let's go just to Australia.
Right.
It's a 2-hour flight.
Right.
Anywhere in the world in 2 hours, right?
Right.
I mean, that's the old MERV philosophy.
Right. And that's kind of one of the selling points for the BFR with SpaceX is entering that kind of, sending people in that way. Yeah.
No, I wouldn't send people on ours. I mean, we got a 15, 20 G acceleration on the ignition.
No.
Because I was approached by some parachute guys. They wanted to jump.
Oh, my God.
Spacesuit and all, right? So there are crazy guys out there that'll do that stuff. But
you must get some interesting calls, man.
The big thing we see is the multiple reentries.
Okay.
Being able to send one rocket and re-enter it to 3 different laboratories. Okay, so that the drone vehicle Hyperion brings back whatever it is to 3 different facilities for independent research.
Mm-hmm.
And then the package delivery side of that application is you can send one rocket, spend the money for one rocket, and still get delivered 3 different places. So you want to go to Australia, India, and China.
Right.
That's fairly easy to do from the West Coast.
Wow. So you enable global business to a whole, and science to a whole nother level.
Science, yeah, and the science. But that's the thing. This was a reaction to a customer survey we did 5 years ago when we first started building the system.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the customers, actually quite a few of the biology and crystal growth customers, specifically wanted a return vessel. They wanted to bring back the experiment and take the crystal down to their electron microscope.
Right.
Right. So every minute it's in the gravity well pollutes it. So the spacecraft Hyperion is eventually our rocket plane subscaled to carry small satellites and take them back to the lab's parking lot. So what we'd like to do, it's not saying the FAA will let us, but this is what we'd like to do with the business model, is re-enter the atmosphere, come in on a couple different re-entry profiles. So if you need to stay below 1G, let's say,
right,
because you're a crystal, a very fragile crystal.
Right. You've got a different re-entry that's good for the force that it needs, right?
Yeah.
Probably a lot longer.
Yeah, it's an atmospheric skipping profile, right? And you basically settle into you're flying.
Right.
And a little bit of a nosedive into the ground.
Right.
And then when you get close to the ground, you fly over the parking lot, you fly into the parking lot, you land, or you fly above the parking lot and deploy a drag chute and land the drone that way.
Jesus.
So now you're talking about bringing it to Halliburton, bringing it to Bayer, bringing it to these companies right to their major parking lot laboratories.
Right.
They walk outside, they pick it up, it's in their microscope.
Yeah. Now, and this might not be attractive to people who are in like the transportation business, but especially if you want to think about, people are always like, space, we should be worrying about the planet. It's like, well, this would help the planet. You're going to reduce the amount of emissions used to get the science to where it needs to be, especially across the world. Oh my God.
Well, let's talk about the transportation industry. Mm-hmm. Okay. You've got a cargo ship out at sea that's got a broken part. Mm-hmm. They have to ship a part out to the oil rig. No more of that. Okay. Within a 2 hours, within a 2 hour order from the ground station, you have the part in your hand with a Hyperion. You raise the balloon, you put the balloon up, and fire the rocket, and an hour later, Hyperion appears at the oil rig, and you've got your new part.
Wow.
Now you're not offline, right?
Right.
Now you're not leaking into the Gulf.
Right.
Okay. You can fix something quick,
mm-hmm.
and that on-demand delivery. When you got a part that is a no-fail item, an item that cannot fail,
yeah,
and it does. Some of these companies will pay almost anything to get that part where it needs to go.
Right. Well, and let's talk numbers.
Putting a person on a plane.
Right. Right. So let's talk numbers, right? So how much, if someone's trying to deliver an orbit, generally, I mean, you don't have to be too specific, but what's generally a launch cost?
So we're scalable between 15 kilograms and 250 kilograms.
Okay.
Payloads.
Yeah.
Okay. And we have a set price of $20,000 a kilogram.
Okay.
In that range. So you're only buying the rocket that you're using. Okay.
Okay.
So if you bring me 15 kilograms at $20,000 a kilogram, that plays out, right?
Right.
But if you bring me 250 kilograms, same thing, $20,000 a kilogram.
Right.
No other rocket offers that flat pricing. And
no.
Again, that came from a customer survey.
They were looking for flat pricing. You gave it to them. I love it.
Yeah, flat pricing and dedicated launches. The other thing they wanted was repeatability.
Mm-hmm.
They want to fire 3 to 5 times a year, is what most researchers asked us.
That's higher than I thought they'd want. That's really good.
Yeah, it's really good numbers, and it's really good across most of the industries that we've talked to about it. Okay? But if I told, because what we do, we ask this a lot, is what would you do in space if I could send you today?
Right.
Today. What would you do? Okay? And that's usually where we start the conversation. Okay? Because we want to bring these customers in. Some of these customers got burned in the 80s with the shuttle program. Okay. They thought, they're going to be able to do research in space and shuttle, and it was going to open up these grand worlds of research and development. And they were never able to get onto shuttle. It was always packed, right? So we've had to reestablish connection with these people and say, look, this is a different industry now.
Right.
This is not the old guys playing anymore. We really want to take you, and we want to take you all the time. So that was that repeatability. And then the mobility was another aspect. You know, the orbits that they can achieve for imaging-wise from launch ports and space ports is not that great. So they can't change orbits. They're usually going to the same place. Even with the deployment ring that's coming online, it's going to be difficult. Being able to take the launcher to the intended imaging target and launch it from that site means a big deal. It means that we can stay over one site over the Earth even through precession, right? For those 2-3 weeks, that 2-3 months that they want.
Wow. That's incredible. Man. Every time I have you on, man, you blow my mind a little bit. I appreciate that.
And I have to give credit. The customer surveys were forced. They were part of a program called ICOR, the University of Akron. It's a National Science Foundation program. And that was what they required for the program, was you do 20 interviews, 30, 100 interviews of customers for your product and get their opinions. So that really did help us prepare us for this environment that we see in small satellites. One of my close friends that's in the industry asked me if I was scared, and I looked at him and said, I hold all the cards. I developed it for the customer's needs.
Right.
Why do I care about the other guys that came on?
Right.
So we're changing the way you look at launch, and that's what's needed. Like I said, like you had mentioned earlier, on-demand launch is the milestone. Reusability has been touted as. Reusability leads to on-demand launches, but it doesn't necessarily have that.
Right.
As the economy needs that on-demand. They don't want to. A business doesn't want to wait 5 years. They don't want to wait 2 years. They don't want to wait 6 months.
Right.
6 months from now, I may not be CEO.
Right.
Okay. So that's the way it is.
Right.
So we really concentrated on that. So you don't see us at the space conferences as much. What you see us in is the hobby 3D printing world. You see us in the medical world. Okay. You'll see us in the materials world. Because we're looking to bring those industries to us. But they're not going to come to us by talking to other space people.
No, it's true, and there's something to that, Brian. You know, I think it's why I call the show All Things Space. I think it's why you look outside the industry, because there's so much potential out there. There's so many people who are fascinated by space, that are interested in space, and in your case, are looking to go into space. Like the actual people looking into space, there's this huge egg ready to crack open of possibilities, and you're right. I think everyone's looking at the reusability part as this wave that's going to bring us into space. But man, this has the potential to be massive, man. And I'm very excited to see what your next year holds with what 1,000 launches we're looking for.
2019 will be orbital. So we'll fire our first orbital shot in 2019, and then I got 12 months after that to bring up my manufacturing to speed.
Wow.
And then we'll go into full operation. So you're looking 2020 being fully operational with 1,000 missions a year.
Dude, this next decade has got a lot of space in it. I'm very excited.
Yeah, this is the beginning of what we see as the largest revolution in technology and human experience ever. And the reason we see this is it encompasses all industries. So the Industrial Revolution didn't touch the farmer until later. Okay, it didn't touch some of the rural, the Agricultural Revolution, the actual, innovation of farming didn't touch a lot of people. It took a while to spread. Well, we've seen amplification of that spreading. We see India, we see Pakistan, we see South Africa, we see French, we see so many countries stepping into the ring. And saying this is important. Unfortunately, the larger population has kind of been disillusioned by it, and that's why we've gone after the kids. And a great example of this, early adopters, which are the kids, they adopt technology early. The great example was the 3D printing. Up until this past Christmas, none of the adults cared about 3D printing. Didn't care. They were at the science center. The printer was there. It was printing away. We had statues. We had nozzles. We had film going. Kids ate it up. After Christmas, the parents started coming up to me and asking me questions. And I looked at one guy. I said, I know you were here last month and you had no interest in this. So what's changed? He goes, this is in January, right? He goes, what has changed is all the kids at school had 3D printers on their Christmas lists.
Wow.
The parents started calling each other, asking them, what is a 3D printer? One of the parents actually went to Office Max and was roaming around the printer aisle.
Oh, that's so funny.
The early adopters, the kids that have grown up with technology and don't know any different, have always had a smartphone in their hand with all of human knowledge in the palm of their hand. Are really the ones that we're looking at as a pipeline. What I did it at CES. I've done it before. Consumer Electronics Show, in Vegas.
Yes, I actually.
Sitting there talking.
Thank you.
I was talking to an adult, and I said, "Excuse me, sir, I've got a VIP that just walked up that I need to talk to." And I only saw like 3 kids at CES. I made it a point to go talk to them specifically. And I stepped aside for a second and began talking to this little kid. And he was 5 years old, right? And his dad's sitting there smiling away. And afterwards, he's got a big grin. I gave him a toy to take off from the 3D printer, and he was off bouncing around in a mini rocket, one of the S days.
Nice.
And he's off bouncing around. The father came back later. He was from France. And he goes, thank you very much. A lot of the people have ignored him. I said, you got to understand, I take my kid to this thing.
Right.
I take my kid. I would take care here. Okay. The advantage that they have. I said, but I'm in the space industry. If I can't talk to him, who's my future inheriting employee, right?
Right.
Then I can't talk to anyone. Okay. So we actually concentrate on the kids in that way. We run classes regularly to try and get the kids involved in this.
Yeah.
As a pipeline. I mean, I got selfish reasons, I'll tell you.
Well, of course. Hey, look, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's about what you do, and I love what you're doing. You're spreading science. You're affecting it at the level that it matters. When you're a kid, when you have all that imagination, and the whole world is open to you, you're not flooded with all the insecurities and knowing too much. You just. That's like you said. They don't know anything different. That's the world they live in, and to be able to help them find science that early is a beautiful thing, and it's great work that you're doing, man.
So one of the things that Bella taught us is there's a movement out there called cosplay. Mm-hmm. You dress up as your Marvel heroes, your Iron Mans, and everything like that.
I'm working on a few myself. Yeah.
So my daughter looked at me and goes, Dad, kids imagine all day long. We pretend all day long, right? She goes, if you can get them pretending with you, you can teach them anything you want, and it won't feel like you're teaching them anything.
Yeah.
Right? They'll absorb it really easily. So we do the costume thing. We do the Comic Cons, and that type of thing, and we draw those people in. The industry has always tried to be, and I give it back to the military type of persona, the buzz cut, suit wearing type of people. That's not really Rocketeers anymore.
Right.
The small satellite guys, we're kind of a ragtag bunch. All 119 of them. Okay. And Bella coined the phrase for all of New Space. She wasn't just talking about us. It was, we are space cowboys and we aim to misbehave. And it was in front of NASA Glenn saying, look, you've got to give us more free technology zones. Zones where I could test a piece of technology without having to jump through 3,000 hoops.
Yeah.
And that was our proposal.
I love that. Oh, she's such an inspiration. I'd love to talk to her someday. Sounds like she's...
We'll get her on.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Perfect. And I got to take a trip out to St. Louis at some point here, so we'll...
Where are you at now?
So I'm still on the East Coast. I'm still in the Boston area. But
okay.
But finally have a little bit of...
I actually lived in
Where?
I used to live in Merrimack, Mass.
Oh, wow. Small world, man. So you're a masshole too.
Yeah,
That's good to know. That's good to know.
Well, I was living in Providence, Rhode Island for a year until realized I was living downtown. That was the same time Buddy Cianci was mayor.
Oh.
And getting indicted.
Yeah. We got some of that here.
yeah, just a little bit.
A little bit.
When your mayor's called Buddy, that's not his real name. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But yeah, I love the fall. The fall's coming up there.
Oh, I can't wait for it.
That's the best time to be in that time.
My favorite season.